Welcome to the very first episode of The Green Room. Today we're thrilled to kick off the show with Dr. Kirk Pomper from Kentucky State University, a top expert on pawpaws. Dr. Pomper has dedicated years to researching this incredible fruit, and we're excited to dive into all things pawpaw with him. So let's get started, and I hope you guys enjoy the series. What exactly are your credentials, and how about you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Kirk Pomper. I'm a professor of horticulture here at Kentucky State University, and yeah, I've studied horticulture all my life. So I do have a master's in horticulture from University of Minnesota and a PhD in horticulture from Oregon State University. So
So, how did you end up at KSU, if you don't mind me asking?
well, it's just one of those, I guess, coincidental opportunities that I was studying horticulture at Oregon State University, and a person was giving a guest lecture about pawpaw who was running their germplasm repository there, Kim Hummer, and she brought a few pawpaws in for us to taste, and so it was part of a seminar. And so I tasted pawpaw. I thought it was good, and then fast forward to about 3 years, 4 years later, a position opened up here at Kentucky State University, mainly working with pawpaw. And I was probably one of the few people who applied for the position who had already tasted it, and so that gave me kind of a leg up, I guess. And so and that was 27 years ago. It was April 1st, 1998 that I started, and so yeah, I've been working with Pawpaw ever since.
Well, that's really crazy. So I'm assuming that pawpaws were not at all popular where you're coming from. Was it something that you had ever heard of before, or that was kind of
No,
the first experience?
that was the first experience, and to be honest, I kind of looked at them the first time, and they were very overripe fruit in poor condition, and kind of wondered about this fruit, and yet it tasted good, and so I think yeah, it's just one of those opportunities that a person had been growing pawpaws actually in Amity, Oregon, a small town in Oregon, and it was such a curiosity that we actually had them. I had a person come in and talk about them at Oregon State University at the horticulture seminar. So that's kind of how it got started, and I knew something about pawpaw. I knew that it had a unique flavor. Little did I know the world of pawpaw that I was going to enter, and all the people who were interested in it.
Yeah, no kidding. That's really crazy. And actually, even when I was first getting into fruiting plants, um, obviously I specifically gear towards figs, but pawpaws are huge. I grow a lot of pawpaws. I really like the flavor of them. And when I was first learning, I didn't even know it. I was watching you speak about them. And so I actually learned a lot about pawpaws directly from you. So it was completely crazy. And so I think there's nobody better to talk to about this specific subject. So for the people who are new into pawpaws, which is typically what we're running into,
Mhm.
how do they get started with them? What's the best place for them to plant them? And what can they expect in those first couple of years of growing?
Right. Well, pawpaw is unique. That it's an understory tree out in the wild. It is pretty tolerant of shade, and but doesn't produce a lot of fruit in those kind of shaded, understory conditions. And so, really, the best way to grow pawpaw is where other fruit trees do well. And so, they're going to want to be out in full sun because that's where they're going to produce the most fruit. They can tolerate full sun even though they are an understory tree, and so they do need some shading, maybe until they're about a foot and a half tall. But they're good in full sun after that. Definitely, you don't want to plant them in an area where they're going to be flooded all the time. They like moisture. They like stream banks a lot. You'll see them in many areas around streams in Kentucky and throughout the southeast. But they don't want to be flooded all the time or for long periods of time. And I guess another consideration is pawpaw flowers in April or so. Um, after peaches, but kind of around the time of the red buds and in the southeast. And so that's a time, of course, where you're going to still have frosts, and oftentimes we're going to get those late April frosts, and so you don't want to plant down in a valley, right? Or as we would say in Kentucky, the holler, or whatever. Where you don't
Right.
want to go in a low area because cold air flows down hillsides and will accumulate in the low areas. And 28 Fahrenheit is kind of a critical temperature for pawpaw flowers. So if it goes any lower than that, they stop supercooling, they start forming crystals, and they kill the flower. So if it's maybe 29 or 30 on that hillside, might be 27 or 26 down at the bottom of the hill. That'll make
Right.
all the difference. So
So let's say that a frost comes in and we're above that 28-degree mark. Would you say that it would kind of be one of those sort of natural thinning processes that would take place? Like you're going to have some flower death, or do you think they kind of survive that pretty well as far as the flowers are concerned?
well, I think that's kind of why pawpaw really proliferates well by root suckers, right? It spreads very very rapidly, and my guess is that that's really the major kind of spreading method that's been selected for by the wild pawpaws by the creek beds. But for us when we're growing up in these orchards a little further up, we're gonna want to have full flowering if we can. We'd rather, a pawpaw is hard to thin, and so it's one of those things, but it's also hard to get enough fruit to set on. So, it's kind of a catch 22 on that. But one interesting thing, of course, about pawpaw is that a tree will flower over an extended period of time. You'll have kind of a concentrated flowering maybe at the beginning for the first week, but then they'll continue to flower maybe for another 2 weeks for a limited number of flowers. So even if you get wiped out, at the beginning kind of that flowering period, you're still going to have a few flowers and have some fruit set.
Right, right. And I've definitely experienced that when I
Yeah.
was first growing them. They got hit pretty hard with the frost, which we're prone to late frost where I live in Northwest Arkansas.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I thought I lost all the fruit, and then, came out a couple days later, and it was happening all over again, and it was really exciting, and I thought that was really interesting
Yeah,
about pawpaws. There's not many fruit trees you get those, second and third chances on. So,
that's right.
so your growing style, where you're at, is typically the orchard style. What kind of spacing are you looking at, and how exactly are you guys planting your trees?
So right now we're kind of looking at a density of about 8 feet between trees in a row, and maybe about 14 feet between the rows to have alleyways that are maybe even 16 feet sometimes, so you can still get down the alleyways. That's a pretty good planting density. It's about 295 trees per acre. They kind of form a hedge as they mature, which is actually kind of a good thing. They kind of one row kind of tends to shade the other a little bit, and that's being a native understory tree. It probably benefits from that. There are folks who are producing fruit out in wild patches. They'll basically thin out the number of trees and remove some of the overhanging trees and some of the canopy above, and they'll get some production. It just won't be as much as kind of that cultivated orchard setting.
Okay. And yeah, that's kind of a misconception that I get a lot on our channel is people saying that they're an understory tree, therefore they should be planted as an understory tree. Um, but I've heard you guys talk a lot about they actually do very, very well in a full sun exposure,
Yeah.
up to what, about 18 inches or so?
Yeah, yeah, about a foot and a half, 18 inches, and then you can use a tree shelter too initially and get up a little higher, maybe to 2 feet, 2.5 feet. But after a foot and a half, they're basically good to go in full sun, and you will get in the end better growth and higher fruiting, uh, uh, higher yields from that. So they do need to have that much sunlight to be able to produce the fruit. Otherwise, they're shaded. They just don't have enough energy to produce more fruit, right?
Right. Um, And another really big thing that I hear, especially with people who have like wild patches, is that they have all these pawpaw trees, but they're not getting any fruit. Can you kind of go into why that's happening and what they can do to fix that?
Sure. Yeah, and that's a, right now we think that Pawpaw is basically self-incompatible, although I've had a couple of graduate students look at fingerprinting of the seedlings from the trees, and in a lot of these trees, maybe 5 to 10% might be the result of selfs, but you're not going to get good fruit set unless you get cross pollination with a genetically different tree, and that's the problem with these patches. Since you do have the root suckers that we just talked about, you can have a patch of 100 trees and they're all exactly genetically the same. So if you even if you have flies, which are we think are the main pollinators, along with lady beetles, that's another graduate student project we have right now. We're capturing insects that visit the flowers, and those were the two prominent ones, but there's probably about 10 others that we find too. So all of those insects might be carrying pollen around a little bit, but if it's carrying the same genetic pollen, it's not going to help fruits out, right? So,
Right, right. And how many trees do you guys have right now?
well, we're going through kind of a rotation right now. Some projects are ending, some are beginning, and so we're still at about 12 acres of trees. I would imagine that we're down maybe to about 2,000 trees right now. We're actually
Wow.
replanting a lot, and we have about 1,500 in the greenhouse and ready to go out yet too. So yeah, a lot of trees.
Yeah, that's full-time work for sure. So let's see here. If we're coming from, let's say somebody's growing a pawpaw from a seed as opposed to having a tree that's grafted, what are the timelines that we're looking at for the two, uh, different types of plantings there, as far as getting fruit set is concerned?
Right. Well, of course, the big problem with pawpaw is just like apples and some of the other asexually propagated horticultural crops. The seed inside is not going to be true to the original parent. And as I always say, just like if you have children, they're not the same as you. That's the same case with the seeds from a pawpaw fruit. And so it may tend to be similar though, and that's why some people will try to plant seeds from certain cultivars, hoping they'll get seedlings that will be similar. But anyways, it will take about 5 to 7 years for a seedling to get its first flower. It has to go through that period of juvenility, right? It's a size issue and number of divisions of the apical stem, apical buds. And so basically, once it gets to a size of around 10 to 15 feet, it's probably going to be about large enough to actually hold fruit. And you may even have flowers a year before, but it may take another year to get to canopy volume to the point where it can hold the fruit. Now, with a grafted tree, that may only be about 3 or 4 years. In fact, you may even see some flowers in the second year on some of the growth, but that's probably not a good idea to let them flower. But
Tear the
but
tree in half.
yeah, exactly. And let it send its energy somewhere else. And so at 3 or 4 years, you'll have flowers and fruit. Some folks are, of course, there's a tree shortage right now, I would dare to say, because there's so much demand for pawpaw trees in the nursery trade right now, and prices are fairly high because of that. And I do think that some things that people can do, and what we're thinking we're going to actually do more of also is a demonstration, is just get rootstock out there in the field and then go and top work the trees after 2 years. And that way, you do have to have a source of budwood, or you have to have a budwood tree to be able to do that. But at this point, if you're trying to establish, sometimes you will lose 20 or more percent of the trees the first year. Why not lose a rootstock tree instead, and then come back? Because if you screw up in the bud, you're always going to get it. Probably is going to grow back, and you're going to get a second chance anyway. So that's not a bad way to go, but that's for a homeowner or a beginning grower, it's probably best off just to get a few grafted trees, experiment with those, and then you can decide whether you want to buy just more grafted trees, or if you want to try your hand at trying to propagate them on this type of rootstock situation.
So, when it comes to pawpaws, something that I've always found fascinating is that they actually can grow in clusters. Even, can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what's going on there, what's allowing that to happen?
Yeah, with with the clusters of fruit, and so basically, and that's why they do kind of look like a hand of bananas or a cluster of bananas, but all those fruit are coming from the same flower, which is kind of unique when you think about it. And so it's all the different ovules that are down in that flower, and so what's frustrating, I guess, about the clusters of pawpaw is that you may have one fruit ripen up, and you'd think, oh, all the rest are going to ripen up at the same time because they must have been initiated basically about the same time, right? Well, that's not the case. You can harvest a fruit from that cluster and maybe come back a week later and it's still not ripe, and so it's just a kind of a unique developmental aspect to pawpaw, but all those clusters are actually coming from one initial flower, and then for whatever reason the timing is different on the ripening.
So, we're not looking at getting all these fruit at one time, where this is going to be kind of a succession harvesting type of deal.
Well, we'd love to do that, and if you talk to Neil Peterson too, he'll tell you what we'd really like to do is have a single fruit, not a cluster, and then basically we can cut at that peduncle, right, and you'd have a nice intact fruit. Otherwise, when you're kind of ripping a fruit off a cluster, you've got that kind of open end, and there can be bacteria or other things that go into the fruit through that torn end. So that's a potential problem, and the problem is that a lot of the varieties have multiple fruit per cluster, and it's really hard to thin. Now, Sherry Crabtree and I have gone around and thinned by hand to one fruit the clusters. That takes a long time. You're
I
twisting
bet.
all the other fruit, and that's about the only thing we have. We tried some chemical thinning, didn't work. What works with apples does not work with pawpaw. And we did try ripening the fruit kind of in a concentrated time period on the tree by applying some ethafon at one point. And unfortunately, we just defoliated the tree. All the leaves fell off and the fruit remained. So apparently a different action than with apples too. So it's pawpaw is very unique. It's not doesn't act like some of the other fruit trees. So we have a ways to go on trying to time out trying to concentrate the ripening period.
So, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the people that watch our videos are seeing pawpaws for the first time. It's very popular, but there's so many people still learning about it. Um,
Mhm.
One of the things that I've noticed with pawpaws is that they are prone to getting spots on them. Can you talk a little bit about that and
Mhm.
its effects on the fruit, if any at all?
Sure. Yeah, because pawpaw, although we say it's a native fruit, doesn't have a lot of pests or diseases. It does have some pests, some diseases, and the worst one probably is it's a black spot or Phylosticta spot. There's sometimes a complex of several fungal organisms that actually form the black spot. So usually we say Phylosticta, but it can be some others too. The fruit will have these fairly large black fungal patches on them, and you also see it on the leaves of many trees. They kind of become a necrotic spot, which means the spot forms and then it shot holes out. There's a hole in the leaf afterwards, and the only real problem is that when it rains, right, then the fruit will continue to expand, and that area on the fruit has died. The epidermis has died, even though it hasn't gone into the fruit. And then it doesn't. When it tries to expand, it doesn't have any elasticity, and so it cracks. And then you crack your fruit, you've got entry of insects or bacteria, and so that's a real problem. So it is something we've tried to control. We tried using sulfur and copper and some other things. It's not easy to control the black spot with organic control measures. Best thing to do though is get rid of all your fruit underneath the trees each year and get rid of the leaves so you don't have inoculum there for the next year. So.
Okay. Um, and they're not really readily available at the stores. Why is that? And is
Mhm.
that something that we could maybe see change in the future through breeding?
Sure, and it comes back. There was an article back in I think it was 1919 or 1918, which was from the American Genetics Association. They had a pawpaw contest and had people send pawpaws from all around the United States, and they selected their winners. Anyways, in that article, it said that with intelligent breeding, pawpaw would soon be found, everywhere across the United States. And of course that just didn't happen. That is that perishability factor, right? It's really only uh, probably will be able to be stored at room temperature for about not even a week, maybe 4 or 5 days, and it over ripens. And of course, back in the turn of the century, we didn't have refrigeration, and so that was really limiting. And so that's why probably blueberry that didn't need refrigeration kind of caught on more as a native fruit. But basically, yeah, pawpaw doesn't ship real well when it softens and ripens too. It gets bruising, and the bruising in the inside the fruit will kind of taste bitter. So it's been a real challenge, and that's why we'd like a really firm fruit that we'd be able to ship better. And Susquehanna is probably the firmest that we've got right now, but it's still not really firm enough to do that. So you just have to when we're sending fruit around, you've got to be willing to realize you're going to lose some fruit when you're trying to ship them if they're fairly soft, and that's just part of the loss that you're going to take on trying to ship very soft fruit. But
So, oh, I'm sorry.
no,
If the fruit is picked early, is it going to ripen off of the tree, or is it one of those fruit that actually needs to be left on the tree to ripen?
it needs to at least initially start to soften. So yeah, I think the temptation is that some people will actually harvest very hard fruit, and they're probably never going to ripen properly or ripen at all. And even if you gas them with ethanol, which is a natural hormone gas, and so basically you have to let them start to ripen, but not let them get too soft when you're gonna ship them. A lot of people, I'd say the best way to probably ship a pawpaw is to wrap it in bubble wrap on a single layer, right, in a cardboard case, and that's probably the best you will do. And it will, most of the time, if fruit isn't too soft, most of it's gonna make it there in pretty good condition. So.
Have you seen more growers trying to get into at least market it locally? Is it becoming easier to find in local markets? I know it doesn't ship well, so it may
Yeah,
not be something that you're going to find everywhere all the time. But
sure. Yeah, I think the processing market is kind of the next step. Right now, you're going to find pawpaws at farmers markets across the region. You're going to find them at grocers, like here in Lexington, Kentucky. We've got Good Foods Co-op. They carry a number of different growers' fruit, and so you'll find it there. But then kind of that next step is the processed product. Now we've got some recommendations, and there is some smaller scale kind of processing that we can recommend to folks, and that's why I do think now the biggest value-added products you see out there are basically in the fermentation industry, right? It's pawpaw beer, pawpaw wine, pawpaw brandy. We've got a distillery down the road here that produces a lot of pawpaw brandy right now. It's been a good seller for them. And then you see a number of people doing jams, and so I think that market's really grown the last few years significantly, and that's probably the biggest commercial use right now for pawpaw is in that value-added market. So it's grown a lot in the last few years. It really has, and that's why I think that we have the tree shortage or the high prices for trees. It's just people are finding more and more out about pawpaw, and they're more and more interested in growing it.
yeah, and with COVID and everything that happened, I saw a really big surge in people wanting to grow their own things at home.
Hmm.
Maybe like the thought process was, oh, maybe something could happen to the food supply and I should start growing some of my own stuff.
Yeah.
Um, have you seen a surge in pawpaws since COVID as well?
I think so. It's a little hard to track. I will say that the USDA does an ag census every, was it 5 years or 4 years, and so the last couple were like 2017 and then 2022, and so the last census just came out this year for 2022, and it included pawpaw for the first time, and so we actually had numbers of farms growing pawpaw. and number of acres. And so I found out that, you know, in here in Kentucky, at least about 96 farmers declared that they have commercial production of pawpaws. I think Ohio beat us. I think they're about 156, something like that. So to be honest, there really there's as many pawpaw growers right now. There's probably more pawpaw growers as there are persimmon growers and nut growers right now, and so it's really surged forward. And so I think it shows you that there's a recognition that it's continuing to grow, that it's even on the ag census now as its own checkoff. Yeah.
Um, so something my viewers are going to be really mad about if I don't ask about it. Um, they really care about fertilization schedules. What kind of schedule are you guys on as fertilization, if any at all? What does the care of your trees look like?
Mhm. Well, for sure, pawpaw is a heavy nitrogen user, and so you are going to have to add some nitrogen. So if you're growing conventionally, we're using urea because we've got so many trees. We really didn't want to spend the money for like 10-10-10 or something like that. But basically urea, and based on the tree size, it's going to get somewhere between maybe an ounce or even 6 to 8 ounces of nitrogen for the large trees, and that's going to be sometime late February, early March. And so it's going to be kind of yet in the winter time, late winter, late, very early spring. And that way most of the nitrogen will go down and actually be utilized by the tree. Otherwise, if you put it on later, you tend to kind of get more vegetative growth. Now, that said, you should do a soil test to kind of see where you are, or a foliar test. That said, some of the trees that we have seen fertigated also once a month with like 2020 with micronutrients sometimes have a quicker growth rate and higher survival. And so, if possible, people should actually also supplement with a water soluble fertilizer maybe once a month for I would say June, August. You don't want to do it after August. You want them to start shutting down. But that does seem to really help them establish, and of course with pawpaw, the first year you plant, you think the tree died, it looks pretty bad, goes through transplant shock. Then the second year you kind of think, well, it looks like it might make it. And then the third year, all of a sudden you see top growth, and that's because it's been going down most of the time that it's been in that spot. And by the third and fourth year, then you'll see a lot of top growth. So you do need to keep fertilizing it during those periods of time, and making sure you water and control the weeds. Weed control is probably the biggest thing. You do not want even a grass around the tree. It will outcompete the tree. So
Wow.
that's kind of important as a aside for the nutrient. And I will add, for organic growers, we do have an organic planting pawpaws. You can use a feather meal, and now, basically, if as long as you're applying nitrogen in some form with an Armory approved product, that would work too.
Okay. As far as maintenance of the trees go, is there anything that you're doing? Obviously we have the fertilization that you were just talking about, but summer into fall into winter, is there anything that you guys are doing to the trees that seems to help them out?
Yeah, well, I think right now, in fact, we just did a really important thing for us because we don't have a lot of evergreens around the K-State farm, right? We've got a lot of sun coming in the wintertime, and there's something called southwest injury that's really hard on pawpaws, especially in our part of the country. And so the sun will come in, hit the south from the southwest. It'll really warm up that southwest side of the tree, and actually dehardens the tree to the cold, and then all of a sudden you'll drop down to 20 degrees that night, and that bark basically is no longer cold hardy, and so it kills the bark on that side. So you'll get this girdling started on the tree, and that will slowly kill the tree or cause the tree to go into decline. And so we take a water soluble exterior latex paint, and we will spray a dilute solution over that trunk, and that way it won't heat up as much. And that really is a critical thing to do in the fall for especially the larger trees, to prevent them from girdling. But otherwise, we won't do any. We'll do some pruning and budwood harvest in February, late February, once the trees have got most of their chilling, and that takes about 600 hours usually of chilling between 35 and 45. And so, and then there's a difference between training basically and pruning, right? Where we're training a tree maybe the first few years to get a architecture we like. We've done kind of a central leader training, and it works pretty well. But after that, you're really trying to rejuvenate the tree. And Neil Peterson always told me that his trees out at the Y Orchard in Maryland, the ones he didn't prune, he lost maybe 3% of trees a year, and those were always the trees that he didn't do any pruning on. So it does reinvigorate the tree. Of course, it puts out more wood for that next year also that has the flower buds on it. But it is important to maybe remove about 20% of kind of the canopy, and we can kind of show you how to do that. But each year you want to remove some of the canopy to regenerate it a little bit.
Okay, just a rejuvenation of the tree.
Yep.
Historically speaking, what kind of information do we have about like the longevity of these trees? So if somebody's planting a pawpaw, is this a tree that's going to disappear in 15 years, or can you expect it to be around for a lifetime? What exactly are we looking at?
So about 20 years is kind of reaching the the longer life expectancy of a pawpaw tree. We've got some plantings we put in 2004, and there's still quite a few trees in that planting, grafted trees and seedlings that are looking pretty good. But when you get to 25 years, you're probably starting to get to the point where you know, you do a lot better if you replace the tree. You'd probably get better production, and so yeah, it's and from what I've seen, the plantings other places like at Maryland, that's about the number of years also. Greg Rieger, who's also a peach breeder at Clemson, who's also grown pawpaws, he's kind of made this same observation. It seems the seedling trees tend to live longer than grafted trees. And so if you do have seedling trees, maybe that'll go 25, easier, but maybe it's a little grafting compatibility that we don't know about or something. But you will see seedling trees live a little longer than the grafted trees.
So most of the research that's been done on these trees would you say it's kind of a younger tree as far as research is concerned?
Yeah, I think most of our truly productive trees are going to be around 5 to 6 years old is when they really come into full production. And then, once you start getting even into, that 15 to 17, you've got to more highly manage them to make sure they keep producing. By 20, as I said, you might be better off to rotate out. And I think that's the beauty of us. We've done some work with a SARE grant looking at this bark inlay onto root suckers or small trees. And to be honest with that might be the best approach. Sometimes is cut that tree down, let that a dominant root sucker come back up and top work that, and just rejuvenate the tree. In the end, you're gonna gain from that than just letting the tree struggle to a slow end of
Right.
production. Yeah.
And just so people understand, when we're talking about these root suckers that are coming up, they do need to be grafted. They're not
Yeah.
the same variety as, the tree that was originally grafted. We're talking about a rootstock
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. These are not. Yeah, the rootstock is whatever that nursery decided to use, or in our case, we use seed from our old regional variety trial. And so, yeah, you don't know what the rootstock is going to be like. It could be really good. It could be horrible in terms of fruit quality. And so, that's why we're gonna top work. We're gonna butt on to that. Yeah.
For the people that want to know if they can grow pawpaws in a container, if that's something that's even feasible, are the root systems capable of doing it? Um, is that something that's possible?
I'm probably going to say no, even though I know a number of people have contacted us also, and a few people have even said they've gotten up to flowering in these very large pots, and I think that's possible, but they're not going to be happy. They've got a very strong taproot. It's going to start winding around. They may flower fairly early because they're stressed, right? I mean, I hate to say it because that's a classic symptom of a tree being stressed is to flower early or at an off time. So it's hard for the tree just to support the fruit then too, because it's not going to be very large or have a large canopy. So in the end, I think if one cannot do that, it's certainly you might be able to grow a tree for a while, but you're not really going to ever get it up into production reliably. Hmm.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Um, you were talking about latex, a diluted latex paint earlier.
Mhm.
I've got a lot of people that are very organic growers, and that might worry them personally. Do you think? Have you guys done any testing on the fruit to see if that affects if the fruit are taking in any of this, or if it's really no difference?
We haven't looked for it. I don't think it's penetrating in. I would not use an oil-based, paint. I would not do that. I think you're going to see it would probably cause some toxicity on the tree, and we haven't really seen that. So I think if one's concerned about that, there's probably some alternatives. And the problem is, I don't think like kale and clay might not really adhere very well, but there might be some other organic alternatives that one could try. Uh, uh, I guess I'm not too familiar with what that paint might be, but there's got to probably be some combination of something that could work.
Right,
It's
right.
it's certainly worth trying. And of course, the other way to do it is to wrap with a reflective white paper, right? And you probably have seen tree wraps like that. You could wrap the trunk with that white paper, and that would, it might be something you have to do every year, but you almost have to paint every year anyway. So that would be the alternative.
And what kind of projects do you guys have going on right now? And do you have anything specifically throughout your research that has really excited you the most?
Sure. Um, I think, of course, developing new cultivars is always the most exciting thing. There's nothing more exciting than thinking you've got the next great thing, and we do have two releases that we'll make next year, and we're gonna have the fifth international Pawpaw conference here next September. I think it's the 9th, 10th, and 11th. So we'll put up more information about that. But we do have two more releases, and then of course we planted out about 1,000 seedlings of different crosses, and so this year we got to try a few of those. It wasn't the greatest year; it was very hot and dry here. Even with irrigation, I don't think the fruit quality was as high as it could have been, but there were several that looked really good to me. So I think that's going to be the next step. Now, of course, we'll have to propagate those and see if they're stable and some other things. So it'll take a few more years, but I do think we've got at least some really nice potential releases in the future yet too if they hold together. So that's a lot of fun. I do enjoy the breeding, and we've made a lot of crosses. I also have been looking at these pollinator relationships. I've got a student working on that, as I said, which pollinators are which, and then whether we have pollinizer relationships. What would be the best variety to plant next to another variety to get the best fruit set? And we still don't really know that, and so I want to work on that a little more. And then we've got fruit storage. I've actually got a student who's been looking at controlled atmosphere, but kind of on a bag level, something that's more low tech that a actual small farmer could do with plastic bags and ethylene scrubbers. And so we're looking at that right now for trying to store pawpaw longer, which I think is exciting. So, and just once again, keep moving forward on different other projects with either propagation or with processing. Those are still two things we keep looking at. Still looking for a better way to process a pawpaw. If we could just take the pawpaw, throw it into the shoot basically, and have it come out as pulp the other side, that would be the dream. But we're not there.
So, on the subject of the fruit itself, and you're talking about processing it and consuming it more, in a lot of different ways. I get people all the time on my videos that are talking about the toxicity of pawpaw fruit. It's a huge thing that people are always talking about. I myself, I never really looked into it all that much. I loved the fruit enough. I was like, well, whatever. But do you have any more information on that? Whether that's true, whether there's research being done on it? Is that something people should worry about?
Well, it all stems back to there was a Lancet article quite a while ago, and I was like it was about '99 or so, and there are pawpaw relatives, the Mericata, which folks ate in Guadalupe, and they would drink tea every day, and they would eat the fruit every day. And in that population, basically, the there was a higher incidence of atypical Parkinsonism than usual. So like usually a third is atypical and two-thirds is not. So it's drug responsive. And in that country in Guadalupe it was the opposite. Now when people stopped consuming the fruit, then they reversed in quite a few of the instances. But the real key in this is that about 3% of the population usually develops Parkinsonism. It was the same rate in Guadalupe of 3%. It's just that the 3% had that flip. So there wasn't a higher rate of Parkinsonism, even though they were, huge numbers of people eating it. So it came back down to, I wanted to know whether there were acetogenins in the fruit itself, because Jerry McLaughlin had looked at parts of the plant and found, about 30 different annonaceous acetogenins that had anti-cancer uh, capacity in the bark. So we looked at ripe fruit, and yep, we do have acetogenins in the fruit, and so we published that. Um, and then we had to kind of figure out, well, what does that mean? And then of course there's been a lot of other work by other labs, different places. Some have kind of sensationalized it more than others, I will just say. But what it does come down to is that it is a long chain fatty acid. It isn't absorbed extremely readily. That's one thing that people need to realize. It's not like it's even absorbed real easily into the body. And so there's that. And and so there are different forms of acetogenin. So at this point, we did contact FDA at one point, and they reviewed what we had given them, and they said that they considered pawpaw, safe to eat as a traditional food source, and so that was their conclusion. But there are acetogenins in there, and if there's no doubt that if you extract them at high levels and put them into neuron culture, they're going to kill the neurons because it's artificial type of environment that you just introduced. So that said, I want to be cautious, and so sunflower is actually the lowest in annonaceous acetogenin content of anything we've found. And so it is one of the parents in everything that we make crosses in, just because I'd rather people feel better about having lower annonaceous acetogenin. At this point, basically how much you eat. Most of us never eat more than a few pawpaws every year. That I don't see that being a concern. But I do want people to feel not concerned about it. So once again, I'd like to have lower ones that we release in the future. So I don't know if I answered your question. At this point, as FDA said what they said, I do know that the long chain fatty acids are not absorbed at high rates. So I personally will continue to eat pawpaw at high amounts whenever I can. But I do want to make sure that that we're proactive on this, and if we can select for those that are lower, that's what we need to do.
Well, that's awesome to hear that. I didn't even know you guys were doing that, so that's really cool. And I kind of always tell my followers, they probably don't like it, but I'm like, there's probably a lot of other habits in our life that we should probably drop before we worry about consuming pawpaw. So,
I will
um,
say, where else is a really where another source of acetogenins is avocado. So the guacamole you're eating has acetogenins too. So you can ponder that when you're at the
food
next
for
time.
thought, no pun intended.
Right, exactly. So there you go.
So, is there anything that I'm sure, the questions I'm asking it's nothing new to you. I'm sure a million people have asked you it. Is there
Mhm.
anything that people aren't asking you that you wish they would?
That's a really good question. I, I guess I guess I wish they were asking me how can I plant more trees in a way.
Yeah.
I do think that pawpaw is an underutilized uh, fruit right now. I think there's a lot of opportunity for it. Um, I do think that we've covered a lot of things that people need to know of how to produce it, and we're still learning a lot of new things. It's still but we got some pretty good recommendations on how to grow it, how to process it. I do wish that somebody from a food science lab would come and say, "Can I work with Pawpaw and help you process it more quickly?" That would be my favorite question. But I really do need to find some additional folks with some additional ideas because we've contacted other groups, and there was a group, I won't say what university, but it was a food science lab, and they thought they had Pawpaw technique worked out because they said, "Oh, the skin is removed." Well, the problem is it didn't remove all the skin, and in fact, I could even see a little skin in all the pulp, and it was really bitter. And it's because the skin, it does actually, especially when you damage the skin, it gets more bitter. If it's a enzymatic damage response. But that's, so that's, yeah, it's going to take a bit to work that out. I did want to follow up on another thing though. There's a lot of folks who want to dry pawpaw fruit into a leather, or they want to freeze dry it. And I'm going to tell you right now, you shouldn't really do that. And we've tried this ourselves, and other people have tried it. And for whatever reason, if you make it into a fruit leather or freeze dry it, and you eat it, it will make you sick to your stomach. And the weird part is if you eat 3 pawpaw fruit, which would be 100 times more than that, or if you can eat just a small little piece. I was trying to hold in my hand like a postage stamp, a freeze dried pawpaw. That freeze dried pawpaw will make you sick to your stomach. So there's some type of odd oxidation event or something going on. It's not like you're condensing things down. It's different from that. There's some other chemical reaction or something going on at the drying event. And so people who tend to, want to make a fruit leather out of pawpaw, well, you'll try it once. You're not going to want to do it again. But we don't really know what that's about. But I'm trying to find some folks to help me work on that too.
And where can people reach out to you guys? Where can people, like, I'm assuming you guys, do you sell your trees and budwood and stuff like that ever directly?
We don't do it directly. I think we've got over 30 nurseries now that we've contracted with that they're licensed to sell the KSU varieties. If you go to the K-State webpage, although you got to go in a ways to find the Pawpaw site, but it's there, and it will have a link to the nursery list of all the folks who are licensed to sell the KSU Pawpaw. So it's quite a few. There's some in Europe also that are selling. So it's yeah, I think that'd be the best way to find out where and who is selling our varieties.
And as far as social media is concerned, because I know you guys do have content,
Mhm.
where can people find you on social media?
I think the best thing right now is Facebook. And in fact, I was serving as an administrator for a few years too, as a dean, but still doing research. And I stepped down from that a year ago. So the Facebook page is much more active now. We're doing a lot more on it, so you can probably expect at least weekly updates on that Facebook page, and then we do answer questions there. So that's if you're interested, that probably be the best way. Otherwise, you can email us. Both Sherry Crabtree and I will get back to you. Uh, and but Facebook is definitely probably the best way to see what we're doing and what new things, because I'm really trying to make sure we push things out about that.
Well, very awesome. I won't take up any more of your time today. I really appreciate you talking to me, talking to all of the followers on our social media. And if you're willing, I'm sure, once this is all edited and put out there and everything, there's probably going to be things that my followers are like, oh, I wish you would have asked this. I wish you would have asked this. So would you ever be willing to come on and do another episode with us?
Oh, sure, absolutely. Yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your knowledge with us, and uh, just really getting the word out there on pawpaws. It's a great fruit, and I know for me personally, and on behalf of all my followers, we appreciate all the work that you put in. Uh, it's amazing, and you've done so much for the growing community. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Thank you.